Ruchir, wanted to kind of change gears now and talk about your experience of doing cybersecurity at Google and especially starting the India team. I think it's going to be very interesting for a lot of people out there because I don't think many people even know about how kind of Google does cybersecurity, what the best practices are, what's the culture, what are the requirements. So would love to understand what was that one key learning that you got out of your kind of 6 years there, and which you are also using, by the way, now as you are doing a 0 to 1 at SydeLabs.
It'll be hard to narrow it down to one, right? Because the best thing that I still miss about the Google the most is the people you work with, right? Like it was such a team of like superstars, right? Like everybody that you hear about in the security world are like your teammates or working around you. But I think one thing that was in like the core of the security team was being very humble when it comes to security, right? Because you look at it this way, right? There's 100,000 different gates that you need to protect, whereas the attacker needs to find one open gate, right? So you're always at a disadvantage when you're doing security, right? Like when you're trying to defend. So you always assume the worst will happen, right? That you will fail or you will like there was a saying that there is an attacker in your network, you've just not found them, right? Like you go with that mindset, right? You never assume that, oh, we're looking for the attacker to get in. The mindset should be that they're already in, you just haven't found them yet. So if a company that has such an advanced security setup with some of the best minds working on it, with all the potential resources, keeps that mindset that assume that security has failed, assume that there is an attacker on your network, and you're always thinking, okay, the attacker is most likely one step ahead of us. Keeping that in mind makes you always look for better approaches, right? If at any point, if you feel that you're ahead of the attacker, that's when you start failing, right? Because their game is much easier than yours. You're not playing on a new level playing field when you're doing cybersecurity, right? You could do everything right, and then there's a human inside your company who might end up making a mistake, and all your controls are out the window. Or you have a rogue employee. What do you do then? So that mindset of being that vigilant and humble and assuming that everything you build is going to fail, not can fail. Just assume it will fail. So how do you prepare for backups? How do you do defense in depth? How do you make sure that you don't trust anybody, but you don't be like arrogant about it, or you do it in a humble way where you're like, okay, I'm not even going to trust my teammate to be doing the right thing, and not because that person is not the right, not a good person, but because their account could be compromised, right? That mindset is something that will stay with me forever, and I think that's what has given me a very different way of looking at security. One very interesting anecdote that I'd like to share, maybe not extremely relevant to the question, but when I was at Google, I assumed I'm going to retire here, right? Like my wife, my team, everybody was like, you're so ingrained in the culture here, you enjoy it so much, you're never going to leave this company. I also thought that. When MPL happened, they called, the first call I made was to the VP of engineering or VP of security at Google. And she told me that, see, Google for sure is at least 5 to 10 years ahead of the startup that you're going to in terms of security, right? So you know the answers for the next 5 years, right? But the things you will learn by failing is something no large company can teach you. So even though I want you to stay at Google, I want you to go to this new place, make mistakes, learn a lot more things. If you don't like it, you can always come back. Right? We're always going to take you back. But there is no way I can give you that accelerated learning curve at a company at the size of Google. Right? That's why I feel like there was a different learning at Google, but there's very different learning when you go to smaller companies where suddenly your number of things you're looking at is much larger. The likelihood of you making failures is much larger. The people you can fall back on. And at Google, I always felt safe in terms of if I fail, there's somebody else who's going to catch it. Because I knew there were like 100 smarter people than me just working in security at least. Right? Whereas when you start moving out smaller and smaller places, that backup starts going away. So it teaches you completely different things. Yeah, that's how I've learned from Google and like switching out of Google as well.
Yeah, that's a great thought. Humility as a cybersecurity professional, founder, operator. I think that'll be, I think, a big takeaway for a lot of founders.
I like that line that you said, which is you don't trust anybody, but then don't be arrogant about it. I just to share one of my personal experiences when I was in AppDynamics. That's my experience in AppDynamics was I had several learnings because that was one of the first jobs where I had spent a lot of time with the security for a couple of reasons. One, because I got into leadership role and two Cisco acquired us. So because of those, but when I was talking to those people, initially it was like a big culture shock for me, right? When you go and talk to other engineers, they are not like, they're not being not necessarily rude, but very direct and straightforward. Like you go to another engineering leader and say, hey, I need an AWS account. They say, oh, okay, I'll add it. This is the security person is like, why do you need it? Like, just the face expressions and the tone, and it's like, why do you need this account? Then that was a big culture shock for me. It's like, dude, I work here, but like, doesn't matter. I'm a security person, so I have to ask the right question. It took some time for me. Initially, I was almost like, what the hell is this guy, a jerk or something? But then slowly I understood. When I really understood the security culture, I was like, okay, yeah, he was just doing his job. Nothing against me.
This is where you follow the Russian ethos of always trust but verify, right? Like, so anytime somebody feels awkward about my questioning, I always say, okay, I trust you, but I need to verify.